Okay, well, I would like to start off and welcome everyone to this webinar today. We've endeavored to put together a series of webinars that's focused on the pharma industry that is very relevant to a lot of companies out there that are looking to simplify, streamline, and modernize their systems. And today, what the area of focus that we're going to be looking at is a very complex process called chargebacks and rebates. And this is typically for companies that are in the more commercialized phase in the pharma industry, but certainly those in the beginning stages, there's a number of other things that we'll cover in some subsequent webinars. So first off, let me introduce Clara Custodio. Clara is our customer experience director, I guess, and she's worn many hats at Consensus. She was kind of our controller for a while. She ran our marketing group, and pretty soon she'll be doing my job before long. So Clara, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, John. My
Clara
pleasure.
is going to do some of the help us with some of the moderation at the end. Next is Christian Bite. Christian is one of our senior implementation consultants at Consensus. He's been around Consensus for a while now. He's got a good, strong background in accounting. That's what he studied in university, but which lends itself very well to a lot of the things that he does in inventory and financial movements and things like that. And so, Christian, welcome. Glad to have you here. I want to point out that
Thank
Christian
you.
is going through a big life event right now. He's going to become a homeowner for the first time, and we just want to thank you, Christian, for supporting our national economy and all the money you're going to spend.
Oh yeah, thank you.
And my name is John Liebold. I am with Consensus. I've been here for a while. I'm going to be kind of the general moderator or MC today. So let's get started. First off, a little housekeeping. We're going to record this session, so that if you would like to come back and take a look at it or share it with other people in your company, we can do that. We'll make sure we get the link to you. All the participants are going to be muted during the presentation until the end of the session, and then we'll kind of open it up. So as we're going through, if you've got questions along the way, please, by all means, hit the QA button and put your questions and things like that, and we'll be prepared at the end to address those. We will keep this meeting short and sweet and concise and succinct. So let's get moving. Before I get into the details here, one thing I want to mention is Consensus is our company. We are an SAP business partner. We've been in business for about 30 years. Consensus is a gold partner with SAP. We've implemented SAP Business One over 900 times. We've got about 110 employees. We're kind of recognized as one of the top 5 partners in North America. Kind of a couple big things that we've done or been able to achieve is the SAP Partner Excellence Award, which is kind of a very important thing for us anyway. It's recognition from SAP that we understand the technology, we know how to take care of customers, and we're pretty experienced at what we're doing. I think the thing that I'm most proud about with Consensus is Consensus has a corporate culture and climate that's one of the best I have ever seen in my entire career. It's based on fundamentals and values that really do create a very high trust work environment. So, and we all believe that when you work in a high trust environment, the very best possible outcomes are there for us. So, about the general webinar series, first off, SAP has thousands of pharma and life science companies as customers around the globe. They've been running their technology for many years on the larger enterprise class, but also SAP Business One, which is the technology that we work with, is their offering that's designed for the small to mid-sized company. And this is an offering that's really ideally suited to the small to mid-sized pharma, biotech, life science companies that are either in the startup phase or the commercialization phase. And the reason that it's such a great platform to build on is probably number one, there is a very rich and robust inventory and item management capabilities that's very much on par with the tier one offerings out there in the world. SAP's had that experience and wanted to architect that into the product. And another real important factor is the advanced architecture that allows this product to scale. So we've got some companies that are, a dozen employees, up to some that are, almost 2 billion in revenue. So the product is very, very scalable. It's a terrific product that will support companies, the newer companies that are starting out, going through the validation process. They tend to like SAP for a number of reasons. Most of it is audit control and seeing transactions that happen and having that the ability to scrutinize things that are going on in the company. So that's a really important one. And also regular FDA compliancy requirements. It does this astoundingly well. So on the next slide, I was watching Netflix, which I do after all my honeydews, chores, and work is out of the way. And I noticed that David Letterman's getting a little bit of a bounce these days. And it kind of made me think of the top 10 reasons why people would really want to use SAP Business One in the pharma sector. So let's start from the end. One is its ubiquitous nature. It has full mobile access. People can get to everything from mobile devices, tablets, laptops, PCs, all those kinds of things. And it gives the people the ability to work remotely. And I think now in this new normal, people are working strange hours, and having this kind of capability is really important. Number 9 would definitely be the ease of use of the product. It's an easy solution to use. We typically, when we implement and turn the system on, we just show what's necessary for a user. We create user profiles that only have things that are germane to those users. And there tends to be a very high adoption rate of users to the system. So there's also a lot of training tools and things that are really awesome. There's great YouTube channels where you can get to things and figure, if you don't know how to do something, there's more than likely an answer to it on one of the many YouTube channels dedicated to SAP Business One. Number 8 would be implementation expediency. I know the larger SAP has had a tendency to get a bad knock for long, protracted implementations. Not the case at all here. This is an entirely different experience. SAP Business One was designed from the very get-go to allow companies to get implemented up and running quickly by a lot of things like pre-configuring areas of the system so you don't have to go through and pay a consultant to do it. It's already done. Control of the data is another really important thing. And a lot of cloud-based solutions where you do not own the hosting of the data, it has created a serious concern. If you go down that road and want to retract, it's very difficult to get a complete data set back. In this case, you always own the data. It's yours. You control it. It's really nice. Number 6 would be some of the deployment options. We're completely agnostic when it comes to deployment. This solution can be deployed in the cloud, on premise. You've got a lot of flexibility there. We are not concerned about that in the least. That's entirely up to what's best for you. In the validation process, if you are going to deploy via the cloud, validation mandates that you have a single tenant environment so that you have the security and those kinds of things. So not a problem at all. We can handle that. I think number 5 would be definitely the real-time ability to see things and manage things through analytics and real-time information. This is a real-time system. Transactions don't get posted and wait till it gets put into another. It's real-time. Everything, when a transaction happens, it's there. And we design all of the users get a sign-on screen that will have the ability to put all of the key metrics or things that they're measured by or are most important to them, so that they see, the top 5 things that they're responsible for or have to control or have to be able to respond to. So it's immediate. You're not waiting for reports and then looking through them and realizing you have a problem. It's immediate. The number 4 would be, this is a great solution for all kinds of companies because it will solve a lot of the immediate requirements that small pharma companies have. They may be up and perhaps they're venture funded and they have their own accounting systems, but they want to really measure the flow of materials coming in, checking quality, making sure they have right inventory, making sure they have the traceability, making sure that the information, if they're gathering quality metrics and those kinds of things are attached to the item, the solution does that right out of the box. And many small startup pharma companies will start off with turning on a few things, and then as they move into more of a commercialization phase, then all the other capabilities are there. So it supports the other feature requirements beautifully. It works really, really well for that. Number 3 would be its advanced architecture. This is a game changer. This is something that nobody else is doing today. The data engine that we mostly deploy is HANA, which is an in-memory computing platform, scales magnificently, irrespective of the size of your company. If your transaction volumes get higher and higher as you grow, we add more engines to it, and it's a very inexpensive proposition to do that. The other thing on the architecture side is its openness and ability to integrate things like, LIMS systems and other quality metrics, or measuring, IoT kind of things that may be important to your company. Not to mention all the standard things that you'd have, like, shipping and logistics and Outlook integration, all those kinds of things. The system is designed to do exactly that. Number 2 would be compliancy. This product supports FDA compliancy for all food and drug companies, all traceability, all those kinds of things. And it also supports the requirements that most pharma companies go through in the validation process. This is a tricky thing to navigate. And SAP holds up really well to that because of its underlying architecture and its ability to really have visibility and acuity to all transactions. And number 1 reason that is that SAP is a strategic platform. It has incredible breadth. The return on investment is nothing short of fantastic. And it provides a great future growth and platform, so you don't have to be changing things out in the future. So those would be the top 10. I know I didn't do that as good as David Letterman, but okay. So let's dive into the next area. Chris is going to take us through.
John, sorry for the interruption. Maybe before diving into the topic, into the demo, maybe we should turn our cameras off to be bandwidth smart, so that we guarantee that we have a good. I think people have already seen us. They know we're here for real, so we're not robots.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, okay. Great idea. Thank you, Clara. Good suggestion. Okay. So in today's webinar, we're going to go through the area of chargebacks and rebates, which is, as I'd mentioned, something that's a real pain for pharma companies to go through, especially, the companies that are now in commercial phase and selling their products. Rebates and chargebacks are a tough one. It's a lot of work to manage it. I think the whole chargeback process can really have a profound impact on profitability of a company, and also really present some challenges for cash flow forecasting and those kinds of things. So this is an area that's always typically done by smaller companies in a manual way, and they're juggling things, and you're trying to make some accruals, but depending on the commercial practices of the individual company, this can easily consume the equivalent of 1 to 1.5 full-time equivalents of people that have to sit there and calculate and figure out what the rebates are. It's a very painful thing. So in the core system, SAP Business One can really take care of this and handles it beautifully. I don't know of anyone else out there doing that, but SAP can really help you simplify, streamline, and automate this cumbersome process. So these are some of the things Chris is going to take us through. He's going to show us some of the sales blanket agreements and how we set those up for the management of rebates and chargebacks and contract management. We'll look at some of the managing all the different accruals that need to be made, and the system will be able to generate journal entries and ultimately create those payments back to customers. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Chris, to take it from here. Okay. Chris, I think you might be on mute.
chargebacks and rebates and how those can be handled for a pharma company in SAP Business One. So the first thing that needs to be set up to be able to handle chargebacks and rebates is what we call a sales blanket agreement. So the reason we need a sales blanket agreement is because we want to tell the system exactly which products and which chargebacks and which rebates apply to maybe that particular customer, so that any of the automation that we have set up can verify, can automatically create journal entries and transactions in the system, and it has a basis that it can use to verify those transactions. So the example blanket agreement I set up right here is for McKesson. They're a large seller of drugs. And what we have is obviously we have the customer, and down here we have what we would call the contract number. So maybe you have a contract with this particular customer that you agree to sell them these products at this price. And maybe the chargeback that they do reference back to that contract number. And really this contract number is a key field to be used so that the system can, again, go back and reference and verify when chargebacks come in. Down here, we just have, I put some examples of items. We have 2 different drug types, and we also have 2 different chargeback types. Now, the different chargeback types correspond to the drugs right here, but we could also use a generic chargeback type if we want, and maybe have it just link back to a generic GL account. There's a lot of different ways that we could have this set up to handle the chargebacks, but the example I have here is just the 2 different products, each with their own corresponding chargebacks. And then I also have a fee on there as well. And again, we could have multiple fees if maybe you accumulate multiple fees or rebates, or we can just have, again, one generic one. Now I have the description, we have the planned quantity, which is required when creating a blanket agreement. But in this example, I have the unit price, which could be, this is the price that is charged on, or that is on the invoice for this particular customer. And then maybe they also have a contract price that could be less than that invoice price. And that's how they derive what that chargeback. It could be the difference between the unit price and the contract price. But we can also handle this by having just a straight price right here that they would pay. And then the chargeback could have a value of, for this item, it's a straight chargeback value of X dollars or X percent. Again, there's a lot of different ways that it can be set up, but this is kind of the general way that we can handle that. So that's why you see the varying prices right here so that we can derive what that chargeback value will be. We also have down here, the rebate fee, and we have a rebate fee percentage. In this particular example, the rebate or the fee is a percentage of the unit price of this particular item when it's sold. Again, that rebate or that fee could be a set value, a certain dollar amount, or it can also be based on, it could be taken from the contract price maybe, or some other value, but just as long as the system knows what it needs to take and if it's a percentage, set value, or whatnot. So this is kind of the setup that needs to be done beforehand, again, so that the system knows what it can use to verify, what accounts to hit, all that. Now, when a chargeback comes in, what we're going to create is a credit memo. And I have an example of one right here. So when the chargeback comes in, it will generate a credit memo in the system. And what it's going to do is it's going to look back again to verify that the contract that we created, and it'll look and verify with the project, which was that contract number. If you remember on the blanket agreement, it'll also look back at the customer and verify that so that it can find the correct blanket agreement. Once it finds that, it can verify that, all right, this particular item is on that agreement. this unit price or this chargeback value is correct and coming in. And we're getting this 25, if you remember from this blanket agreement, by taking the 100 minus the 75, which gives us the $25 chargeback value. But it could also be a static value, as I mentioned earlier. And what we do is we have the reference to the item right here, but more importantly, we have the chargeback that is being applied and that value. And that's really what is the main item here and what is accounting for the total chargeback value for this one particular chargeback. And the reason we have that on there is so that accounting-wise, we can account for a chargeback accrual or be able to put it in whatever GL accounts that this chargeback needs to be accounted for. One other thing I want to note is we also have up here a place where we can put back the chargeback ID or the chargeback number, the chargeback reference number, whatever it happens to be, so that we can always have this reference. And this is also very important at the time when the chargeback is being claimed by the customer, that we have a way to find which chargebacks are being claimed, because more than likely they will be referencing this number as they claim them on the various invoices they're paying. The other thing to note is that this chargeback comes in or can come in through EDI with an 844, or if it comes in as some type of CSV or whatever type of file, we can handle any of those. All it requires is a mapping so that when that file comes in, gets put into whatever file path it needs to, the system automation can recognize that, pick it up, and it will automatically create this credit memo, and it'll automatically create this chargeback. So there'll be no more manually creating chargebacks, manually accounting for chargebacks. The system will start generating these automatically as they come in. The other thing I want to point out is when we look at the journal entry preview for this, we can see we're getting the credit to the AR account for the customer. And we have no tax going on here, but we have the debit being picked up in this chargeback accrual account. So what we're doing is we are starting to accumulate this chargeback accrual and starting to keep that liability on hand, because technically this customer has not taken that chargeback yet, but they've told us, hey, we're claiming this, but we haven't applied it to any invoices yet. So we're going to eventually be applying this to an invoice, just not yet. So we want to still keep that accrual on our books here. The other thing that happens at the same time that this credit memo is being created to account for the chargeback is what we call the, it would be 6 here. It would be us accounting for that fee percentage. So at the same time that chargeback comes in, the system will automatically create a journal entry for that fee that was mentioned. And you can see up here, we reference back to that credit memo number. We have that credit memo ID referenced right here. And then we can also reference other information in this reference 3 if we wanted to. But the other important part is, I have a remark up here of it's just starting the accrual for the fee. And we also, again, have that project mentioned or that contract number here. So everything is linked. So if you ever need to search or be able to figure out what is this journal entry referencing to, what are these fees, where's this chargeback, a lot of this information is there that we can use for reference and be able to find exactly what we're looking for. And so right here, we have that fee being accounted under a liability, because eventually, I don't know, a quarter, year, whatever happens to be when maybe you owe those fees or those rebates, you've already accounted for that in your liability, and we've put it into this fee accrual account. Now, in this example, I have these fees being accounted at the time the chargeback comes in. But these fees could be accounted at maybe at the time of invoice or when the invoice is paid. We have a lot of options of exactly when we want something to be taken into account or when we want the system to do it. The other thing to note is all of the accounting, any of the accounting names, the numbers, the setup for the accounting is very flexible as well. It really depends on how, your business wants to account for accruals, how they want to account for chargebacks, at what point do they want to have the liability. And all of that's pretty flexible and can be managed in the setup of the SAP Business One chargebacks and fees right there. So just keep that in mind when we go through this, is a lot of these journal entries and a lot of the accounting is very flexible and can be changed. So it might not, or maybe the way that you do your accounting or that you account for all of this is not exactly the same. Now, once that chargeback has been there, it's going to sit as an open credit memo, waiting for a payment to come through or waiting for that customer to pay an invoice and claim those chargebacks on that particular, on those particular invoices. So I'm going to go down to banking. I'm going to go to incoming payments. And right here, we have, again, that customer. And right here, we can see that we have that credit memo right here, which is number 18 that we saw before. So this is that same one I showed earlier. And then I also have another credit memo that represents another chargeback. And in this example, it happens to be for the same amount, but it could be a different amount. And of course, if we have multiple chargebacks, we would see a lot more credit memos right here. We also have an invoice. And when we look at the invoice, it's, a normal invoice. It can contain both items. It can contain just the one item, just a normal invoice, the way that SAP works. And here we can see that we've claimed these credit memos onto this invoice, and it has reduced our total for this invoice right here. Now, it doesn't totally match up because, the payment, there could be discounts for, paying early and all that kind of stuff that's taken there. But the concept is the same. And the other thing to note is that when you get a payment file saying from the customer saying that this, we're claiming these chargebacks for these invoices, that can also be automated. So again, whether that file comes in through CSV or EDI or some form that we get that file can come in, the system will pick up that file and be able to read that chargeback ID or that credit memo number, whatever information is there, and be able to record this payment, again, automatically. It will grab the invoice, it'll grab all of the chargebacks that have been applied and start to generate these incoming payments. And then of course it will, if the money actually came in via a wire transfer or an ACH, it'll record it that way. Or if they paid with a check, then it could record it as being paid with a check. But it kind of depends, again, on how the payment is coming in and the files being mentioned there. So that's just an example right here of the payments coming in, the system claiming those chargebacks and applying them to an invoice right here. Now, the last step I want to show is for the changing the chargeback from 7 is the last journal entry that's happening. And this journal entry happens automatically at the time a payment is being recorded. And what it's doing is it's taking that value out of the chargeback accrual and putting it into the actual chargeback expense or the contra revenue account or wherever it needs to go. But the main thing that's happening here is it's pulling it out of the accrual. And if you remember, that accrual was hit at the time the chargeback was created because we didn't know when it'll be claimed, which invoices it'll be applied to. It's just going to be sitting there in that accrual until something happens. And here is where it's being reversed out of that accrual and put into the actual chargebacks. Again, this is happening automatically when the payment's received. But this can also be done at another time. Maybe it's not at the time of the payment. Maybe you want to do it a little bit earlier. Again, it can always be adjusted to how it will fit your business and how your business can account for, when to recognize the chargebacks, when to take stuff out of the accrual, various things like that. So that's the basic chargeback process that we go through. We have the blanket agreement, which could be the contract you have with the customer. It has all of the items that you sell them, the chargebacks, any fees that you might incur when selling these items. When you get that chargeback information from the customer, the system will create the credit memos and also the journal entries to account for the liability for any of those fees. And then, of course, when the payment comes in, it will, again, automatically grab any of those credit memos that it recognizes through that chargeback ID or the credit memo number and any of the invoices and start applying those and reducing your invoices and then recording your payment. And then finally, we get the journal entry taking it out of the chargeback accrual and into the chargeback account. So what this does, and what the stuff that I showed you here, can all be automated. So really all of these screens that you're seeing, all the transactions that I have here that you would normally have to do manually, can all be automated in the system. All we need is just the files and then the setup beforehand, and it'll greatly reduce the amount of manual work or time people spend doing all of these transactions manually right now. The last thing I want to point out is that those fees are still sitting in that accrual. So when it is time to have to pay those fees or those rebates back to your customers, it's just as simple as creating an AP invoice with that fee item mentioned on there and paying it as you normally would an AP invoice. And then we can have a journal entry clear it out of maybe that fee accrual and put it into an actual fee expense, for example. All right, so that's a basic run through of the chargeback, rebate, and fee process inside SAP Business One. If there's any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good job. Okay, let's see. It looks like we've got a few questions here. Okay, first off, is SAP Business One expensive to buy and implement? I'll take that one. No, actually, it's not at all. It's surprisingly inexpensive. Typically, the way SAP licenses the product is they're usually a one-time license fee. There are two types of basic licenses that you can buy when you buy SAP Business One. It comes as an all-in. You get all of its capabilities in one. Sometimes there may be additional add-ons that may be required, but the standard implementation has basically two types of licenses. The first one is what we call a professional license, which gives full access to everything in the system. Again, that can be curtailed or adjusted accordingly. And then there is what's called a limited use license for different areas where someone may only use that functional requirement, and the cost is significantly less for those. The professional licenses are usually around $3,300, and the limited use licenses are around $1,600. There's also some interesting ways of purchasing the product. You can have what's called a 5-year type lease, where it's a standard fixed amount for every month. It's very predictable, works out great for the startup companies. They have a good idea of what it's going to take to buy the product, and they can predict their cash flow with a steady lease type payment through one of the SAP approved financing operations. So good. Next question. Can I have it auto import files in? Chris,
I think this one's for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so kind of mentioned earlier. Yes, it can auto import any of the files as long as we can get them in some type of file format and do the mapping for that. Usually it's if it's coming in through EDI, it's coming in through an EDI, and then it's put into an FTP file. Or if you're getting those files in via CSV or something like that, or those are being emailed to you from your customer, maybe you could take that file and then just put it into the correct file path, again, an FTP file, and then the system can, again, grab it and import it in. And that works for both chargebacks and, we call them, I guess, a remittance file, or the, when they tell you, hey, we're claiming these chargebacks and paying these invoices, it works both ways. So as long as we have that file type, we can do the mapping and the system can import it in no problem.
Okay, good. 2 more questions, and both of these are about chargebacks. So these will be for you, Chris. First one is, can it work if my chargebacks are a set value?
Yeah, definitely. Again, mentioned earlier, so the system is very customizable. So if it is just a set value, we could have a set static value. And then when that chargeback comes in, the system just verifies it on a set value instead of doing the math and taking it from, the unit price minus the contract price right there. But at the end of the day, either way would work. And again, the system will always verify. So if it comes in, differently or not matching, the system will let you know. And then, you can go from there and adjust what you need to adjust.
Okay, good. And the last question is, I don't see any more coming in here. What kind of reports does it have for chargebacks? Chris, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, sure. So, I didn't show any earlier, but we have a few different reports that we've done. And the thing to keep in mind is we can pretty much design the reports however you need them to look. But usually from what we found, a lot of people like a kind of standard chargeback report that gives them just a list of all the chargebacks that have come in, all the information related to them, because oftentimes they'll come in with a lot more information than we really need to create the credit memos and do the accounting in the background. But maybe there's some for example, like DEA numbers on there, or addresses of, the different distribution centers or the different pharmacies and whatnot. So a lot of that information can be captured and developed into a report. And we also have a report on, the remittance side. So it could be a report of, chargebacks claimed in the past, month, or however it wants to be. So there's a few different reports that we can do, but at the end of the day, it's all kind of, what do you need to see? And we can tailor it to what exactly you need to see there, because all that information is captured, all the information is in the system. We just need to grab it and display it for you.
Great. Okay. Well, that's it. You're a silent group out there. I don't see any more questions coming in.
No, I don't think we have any more.
Okay, then we'll wrap this up. Thank you again for your time and attention. Much appreciated. Thank you, Chris and Clara, for your help here.
Absolutely.
Wishing everyone a safe and great day today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and do contact us if you have additional questions, or if you would like to explore how this could work for your company. We're here for you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Bye-bye.